Hey friends, this is Ernie, the Trader of Futures, and this video is about the options Greeks, an intro to the Greeks.
And we're going to start off with delta. Delta is the rate of change in the price of an option with respect to the underlying stock or security. And as I said a little earlier, that delta can be negative or positive. So a negative delta indicates that the option price is moving opposite the price of the underlying stock or security. And a positive delta indicates that the option price is moving with the stock. And it has a direct correlation. It's kind of like a factor telling you, well, how fast is the option moving with respect to the stock? And so a delta of 1 means that the option is moving with the stock 1 to 1. So every time the stock goes up, if there is a delta that is exactly 1, then every time the stock goes up $1, so does the option. All right, and if it goes down $1, so does the option. Now, now that means that a delta that's over 1 means that it's moving faster than the stock, and if it's under 1, it's moving slower than the stock. And of course, if it's negative, it means it's moving opposite, in the opposite direction of the stock. One of the things that you need to be cognizant of is that delta isn't static, right? And what I mean by that is that as a stock price moves and goes up or goes down, the delta may change as well. So it doesn't stay, at one spot. And you can say, well, it always, my delta is 80, so it's always going to stay 80. No, it can actually move quite a bit depending on which way the stock moves. So you have to be very, very cognizant of that you don't get complacent thinking, oh, I have a delta of 80 and it's always going to be 80, because you turn around and then, a few minutes later it could be at 40 and you wonder why. And that's where gamma comes in. So delta is not static as a stock price changes. And as a stock price changes, so does the delta. And the rate of this change is actually measured by gamma. All right. Now, here's some things that you should remember about delta. That when you're buying calls, that always results in a positive delta. And when you're selling calls, that always results in a negative delta. And then conversely, with puts, when you're buying puts, that results in a negative delta, and when you're selling puts, that results in a positive delta. All right. So, and like I said before, a positive delta of say 0.75 means that for every $1 that the underlying stock rises, the option also rises $75. So that's because there are 100 shares for that each contract represents. That's why I moved the decimal place over 2. So it may be 0.75, but that represents 100 shares, so you multiply it by 100. All right. Now on to gamma. Now, as I said, gamma is like the second derivative. It is a derivative of delta, where delta is velocity, gamma is like the acceleration. And gamma is generally expressed, well, it is expressed as a percentage, and it can either be positive or negative. And it measures the rate of change of the delta. So how fast that relationship between the options pricing and the underlying stock is changing. All right. As I said before, delta isn't static. It changes. And gamma is what we use to measure that rate of change. And gamma is going to come in and really be a principal thing that we'll be looking at especially when we're looking at some of our more neutral strategies and monitoring that to see where we're at. So, like I said, it can also be negative or positive. And it measures the rate of change of delta. And mathematically speaking, the gamma is the first derivative of delta. And it's used to gauge the price movement or volatility of an option. And it's doing this all relative to where that in the money line is. All right. So gamma is really focused on that division here that we see in our option chain, where it goes from dark to to gray, from out of the money to into the money. Or the closer that you are to the money, the higher the gamma. And then when you move further out of the money, the lower the gamma. So generally, you want to be long on higher gamma and short on lower gamma. All right. What that means is that I want to be a net buyer of options that have the highest gamma, and I want to be a net seller of options that have the lower gamma. I guess then, conversely, if you think about that, then long options typically have a positive gamma, and short options have a negative gamma. All right. I don't know if that, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Again, so gamma is measuring the rate of change of the delta as we approach or move away from at the money, right? So as we're going close to in the money, as we're approaching in the money or the at the money line, gamma is getting higher. As we move away from it, it's getting lower, and that also means that is affecting the delta too. As we're moving away, the delta's getting less and less. That's why things that are way out of the money, they have very low deltas, and they don't move nearly as fast as the stock. Let's move down to, let's start talking a little bit about theta. All right. Now, before I said that theta is associated with time, and I said that I also said that stock options have two basic components that they use to price themselves. There is the intrinsic value, which would be the real value of something that's in the money when a stock is in the money. And then the other value is time and volatility. And that is also known as the premium. And that changes. It goes up and down based on how far away you are from expiration and what type of implied volatility there is on that particular underlying stock. So theta measures the sensitivity of an option to the passage of time, or the passage of time, or the amount of decay it has over time. And it also can be positive or negative. Now, positive theta means that the value of the option is theoretically decreasing each day that amount of the theta. So in other words, if I have a positive theta of, say, 10, right, that means, or 10 cents, 0.1, that means that my option each day is decreasing by 10 cents. All right. And if it's negative, then it's obviously the opposite. It's increasing. So as a general rule, this is not a general rule, this is an actual rule. Long options have a negative theta. All right. They're decreasing or they're increasing. And short options have a positive theta. So what I meant by that is, when you write an option, you're the writer of an option, it has a positive theta. You're actually collecting premiums. So that's why it has a positive theta. If you're long an option, then it's continually decreasing, or the time value is continually moving away from you. So it's negative. And so it's that theta is constantly eating away at the premium of your option. Theta is a fundamental component, or maybe a different way to say this is the fundamental component in the pricing of an option is that time value, otherwise known as premium, the amount of premium remaining in an option until expiration. And this is another way I'm throwing a lot of terms out. Another way to view this is that this is the extrinsic value of an option. The more time remaining, the higher the premium that is priced into the option, and this premium decreases with the expiration as the expiration nears. And you'll hear this often referred to as the theta decay or the premium decay. And you've probably also seen that there's these exponential charts showing as we get closer to options expiration, the decay of that premium decays at an exponential rate. And so that means that for like weekly options, what's really cool about those, when we start selling options, for instance, and we're collecting that premium, that last day, the late Thursday and Friday, that where that premium is being collected at an exponential rate. And so that's really, really important when we start looking at some of these different strategies in terms of the timing when we decide to either get in or get out of that strategy. The last Greek that we're going to talk about today is Vega. And as I said, because it begins with a V, that should stand for volatility. And in fact, Vega measures how an option is priced with respect to volatility. So the higher the volatility is, that increases the extrinsic value or the premium of that option, while lower volatility decreases the extrinsic value of that option. So it is said that options are generally more expensive when volatility is high. That's because that pumps up the extrinsic or the premium of that option. And they're cheap when volatility is low. All right. So that's the explanation of the Greeks.